Okay, so every single year, the NFL draft seems to be just like a game of Russian roulette, where teams enter the contest with hope and leave with either a cornerstone for the future or, well, Zach Wilson. That sets them back for decades. And you know, since this football holiday is coming up, it got me thinking, was there ever a draft throughout the entire history of the NFL where a team had a fair chance to pick up either a piece of gold or a live explosive? Anyways, enough with the intro. Sit back and allow me to break down the ticking time bomb that was the very polarizing 2004 NFL draft class. Alright, so the 2004 NFL draft was hyped up as one of the best talent pools in NFL history, and was supposed to have a can't-miss prospect at basically every position. So if you had the first pick in this draft, then you basically had a ticket to a franchise quarterback, and finally it looked like the Chargers were going to catch a break when they took a potential Hall of Fame quarterback in Eli Manning first overall. Then problems begin to ensue because Eli Manning virtually held the Chargers organization hostage and refused to play for him. I mean, it was the Chargers though, so I can't exactly blame the man. So New York was kind of just like, okay, cool, I guess we'll go pick up Eli Manning, and they ended up trading their 4th overall selection, Phillip Rivers, for Eli Manning, swapping the two future potential Hall of Fame quarterbacks for one another. And for such an odd situation that's never happened before, this trade, it pretty much turned out to be as close to a win-win as you could possibly get, as Phillip Rivers was dominant with the Chargers but was never able to exercise the Chargers' curse, and Eli Manning on the other side was able to win 2 Super Bowls with the Giants. But like I said, Russian roulette's gonna be the theme here, and the Raiders had the 2nd overall pick and took a can't-miss offensive lineman prospect with Robert Gallery going 2nd overall. This man, Robert Gallery, was supposed to be the second coming of Orlando Pace and nothing short of that. I mean, he had so much hype that the Browns offered their 6th overall pick and an additional first to trade up just a few selections to grab him. But when the Raiders find a guy they like, they're taking him, no questions asked. So the Raiders drafted Robert Gallery, pulled the trigger, and it turned out it wasn't a blank, it was a full bullet. They shot themselves right in the head, and Robert Gallery was an absolute garbage can. I mean, you know, for Raiders standards, I guess he wasn't the top of the tier list, but it's still a massive bust nevertheless. So every single team was trembling with fear at their selections, but they still had to step up to the podium and at least give it a shot. So the Cardinals took their chance and spun the wheel and ended up drafting a Hall of Fame wide receiver in Larry Fitzgerald. I mean, you all know Larry, right? You know, nice guy, one of the best longevity receivers that we've ever seen, but, you know, he had his issues. And as will be a very, very unfortunate theme from this point on, pretty much every single player drafted came with a load of baggage right beside him. So after Arizona seemingly got a good selection, Washington came up to the stage, spun the wheel, and landed on Sean Taylor. And just like the Cardinals, you know, things were looking great early on. Sean Taylor was dominant early on in his career, and on the field was one of the most fun players to watch. And at this point, it looked like Sean Taylor was only going to be getting better, improving his coverage skills while maintaining his ability to knock the living hell out of people. And just at the time where it looked like Washington had found a diamond in the rough, Sean Taylor was tragically shot, and it ended his entire NFL career and his life on the spot. And I would like to say this is the lowest point in the draft, but just one selection later, it gets even worse. After Washington's horror, Cleveland stepped onto the stage, spun the wheel, and they got themselves Kellen Winslow Jr., and it looked like they struck gold as well. A little bit different than Sean Taylor's situation though, because Kellen Winslow took a little bit to develop, but when he finally did, he became one of the best tight ends in the entire league. He became a premier part on some of the worst Brown teams of all time, so nobody was really paying attention to him until things caught up with him, I guess, as he had some previous injuries on a motorcycle accident, but a staph infection pretty much completely stopped his tracks of stardom right there in 2008. And that just doesn't happen, but in this draft class, this isn't anything out of the ordinary, as Kellen Winslow would basically stop being elite, bouncing around from team to team, finding himself in New England, the Jets, and the Bucks. You know, I just wanted to say that at one point, the Patriots had a tight end duo of Aaron Hernandez and Kellen Winslow Jr. Oh, have mercy on those linebackers. Anyway, although Kellen Winslow may have had an overall positive impact on the Browns roster when he was there, the curse runs deep, way too deep, as after he had fully retired from the NFL, Kellen Winslow went on to commit possibly the worst crime a human being can commit. So the 2004 draft class had just made a statement, and not one that anyone ever wanted to see, having 2 back-to-back picks with tragic endings, one completely deserved and one undeserved on all levels. And you know what? Somehow, it doesn't get any better. It's almost like someone in this draft class just made a deal with the devil, sacrificing all of their other partners for one singular miracle. I mean, the quantity and level of crimes that were committed by players just drafted in the first round are unreal. The 9th overall pick, Jaguars wide receiver Reggie Williams, was arrested in 2009 and never played in the NFL again. And you know what? That doesn't even come within a solar system to what happened to Dante Robinson, because he almost met a fate similar to Sean Taylor. The story behind Dante Robinson goes on a random night in 2007, Robinson's house was broken into and he was held at gunpoint and blindfolded. And while he was blindfolded, it was pretty clear to him, as well as reports, that the 2 men that were allegedly in his house were robbing him for just about everything they could possibly find. And while these 2 men were doing whatever they pleased in his house, Robinson was somehow able to free the bandana and identify the 2 men that were robbing him. He ended up getting them arrested, but oh my god, it is downright frightening how messed up this draft is. The very next selection was Ben Roethlisberger. You know, the man was just an absolute monster on the field and an absolute monster off the field. Now, although I'd rather do just about anything else than share this story, yeah, I have to. Make sure you have something to vomit into on standby, because in 2008, Ben Roethlisberger was accused of leading a female hotel employee to his room, locking the door, and then, yeah. Turns out he was never criminally charged for this and basically just paid off the woman in question. Then he rested for just 2 years, came back in 2010 and did it again, this time getting his bodyguards involved. And how is this guy not rotting in a jail cell? One after the other. It seemed like every single player that was drafted in just the first round alone was getting arrested on very serious charges. Vile accusations, one after the other, and there was no stopping the downpour of crimes. I mean, if you think the Raiders' 2020 class was bad, which, you know, it really was, don't get me wrong, but in the 2004 first round alone, each team had a 43.75% chance to draft a player who would go on to be charged with a crime. But okay, let's get a little bit more lighthearted here, because this draft also has some goofy moments, like Matt Schaub setting an almost unbreakable record of throwing a pick 6 in 4 straight games. Then you got a story like this one, which is a little bit more serious, but still caught me off guard, where Vince Wilfork, Patriots legend, had his Super Bowl rings stolen by his own son, but got them back after, I guess, I don't know, a mean scolding. And of course, don't worry, this draft has more, as you have the star player whose career was just absolutely devastated by injuries, with a guy like Bob Sanders. To give a quick rundown on Bob Sanders, he was drafted in the second round of this draft by the Colts and was basically a star the moment he stepped on the field, making 2 All-Pro teams in just 3 years and winning the 2007 Defensive Player of the Year award. But yeah, if you haven't exactly picked up on what's going on so far, if you're drafted in this draft class, then you're not getting off the hook easy, as Bob Sanders was just swallowed whole by his injuries and he was never the same player again. Then, of course, you got your draft jester with Jared Allen, who coincidentally was incredibly good at football. And because he was so good at football, he often was able to show off possibly the best sack dance in the history of the game, and had an insane prime, making 3 straight All-Pro teams with Minnesota and Kansas City. Also, I gotta salute the man for helping to pioneer Sunday Night Football intros.
Jared Allen, Culinary Academy.
Then, of course, you have the draft jester on the field with laughably terrible play with Jason David, who coincidentally was taken just 1 pick after Jared Allen. All I gotta say here is in 2007, when Jared Allen was making all-pro teams, our old pal Jason David was busy being the worst cornerback of all time, allowing more yards per completion than simply not even having a cornerback on the field. So there you have it. From the darkest moments a man can possibly face, including being held at gunpoint in your own house. All of these reasons are just a few to remember the 2004 NFL Draft for years to come. Anyways, if you like this video, then subscribe, because I'm going to be pumping out content like this all off season, and if you enjoyed, then it'd be nice to stick around. Anyways, until next time.